Hey everyone, and welcome back to our inspirational interview series. I'm Hannah Levin with Heartfelt Wellbeing, and I'm super excited to introduce our guest for today, who is an old friend of mine, and we're just reconnecting. So this is really exciting. When I was thinking about who could we bring on, who could be an expert for our community in using yoga to heal trauma, I was like, Becca. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Becca Odom today. So let me just read to you her little intro and then we'll bring her on. So Becca Odom is a licensed clinical social worker and registered yoga teacher with over a decade of experience in the mental health and wellness field. Becca specializes in combining somatic approaches with EMDR for traumatic recovery. She primarily works with women who have experienced trauma, chronic stress, and anxiety. Her passion is to empower others to heal themselves, and she specializes in anxiety, trauma recovery, and stress management. So I'm delighted to welcome Becca all the way from Arkansas. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad to be able to connect with you in this way and share you with my community. So I'd love for you just to introduce yourself beyond what I just did in terms of how you came to do this work and what that calling was for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long journey. I had my good friend's mom, who's like my bonus mom, introduced me to yoga when I was 16, gave me my first video, and it just planted the seed. And slowly I got more into it. And when I went to college, there was free yoga classes. And so I
Mm,
started really diving in. And I mean, I needed it for forever, but I found it when I found it. And I just remember leaving this one yoga class and I felt so different. I've never felt so peaceful and calm. And I was like, all I did was just this hour class and it turned something for me. And I started diving deeper into it. And then I've gotten my undergrad and graduate degree in social work. And so I started applying some of the things I was learning in those classes at my internships with people that I was working with and seeing how that was really helping. And then I moved to Asheville about 11 years ago. And the first thing I did was signed up for yoga teacher training to get more official of how to actually really do this in a concrete way. And it's changed my life. And it's been such an honor
mm,
to watch how it's helped other people change their own lives and really teach them tools that they can take with them throughout their
mm,
lives to continue to
mm.
help navigate the twists and turns that life will bring us, as we know inevitably will come, and be more resilient with it. So it's been, I believe in it because I've felt the change. And I feel like that's everything I've specialized in. It's because there's things that have changed my life. And so then I felt called
Yeah.
to bring that more into the world.
Yeah. I think that's true for a lot of us that end up
Mhm.
in the healing professions is that we come to it from our doing our own healing work. That's been really powerful for us, and we don't want others to continue to struggle in the same ways that we had
Mhm.
before. Can you give us your definition of trauma? I
Mhm.
know that's a big buzzword right now.
Yeah, it is. And
How do you
there's
see
so many definitions of it. And I
it?
think the most simplified ways that I think of it is when something's happening to a person that they can't control in that moment, then leaves them feeling helpless or hopeless. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like the essence of trauma is something that we don't have control over. And then we feel helpless, hopeless in those moments. And there's all these different reasons of why two people can go through the same exact event, like a natural disaster, but leave that experience being impacted in really different ways. So our
Mm-hmm.
neurological development, what skills we had in that moment, how the people around us responded to it, especially caregivers if we're younger, how they did or
Mm-hmm.
didn't respond to it, all can have that traumatic impact. And there's like the big T
Mm-hmm.
traumas, right? Like a natural disaster. But I think more importantly, there's these little T traumas that we go through, like these small things that we can minimize, but it's like living with a low grade fever, right? If we had a low grade
Mm-hmm.
fever for years, it would really impact us. And I think that's the type of trauma that I think is really important to bring into the awareness because it's so easy to brush that off, but they have an impact and they compound and will slowly impact us more and more as we go through them. Like a global pandemic, right? It's like
Right.
every day for years, like this, I think we'll be processing how this has impacted our entire world for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really what this community that you're speaking in right now stemmed out of the the pandemic and me being like, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
People need yoga right now. Yoga studios are closing down. What can I do? I'm like, I know I can show up every single day and teach yoga, and just people can join from anywhere. And I feel like that has brought trauma more to the forefront for me in terms of our collective experience of it, of that experience of like, people need yoga right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm drawn to it, but not trained in working. I mean, I'm trained in yoga, but not necessarily in using it to heal trauma. So can you talk to us a little bit about what defines that yoga for trauma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So often, I mean, yoga for trauma is because trauma happens to the body, right? And often we start to kind of disconnect because the body has all these reminders and triggers that can come from that. And so to me, yoga is really about coming back to the source of where it all began. And so yoga for trauma has this more informed approach, right? Invitation is really important. Giving options is really important. That languaging around giving room for each person to have their own experience, I think, is a big element of yoga for trauma, and giving a wide array of tools because there's no one way to heal, right? And so I think having a wide variety is really important of breathing practices and movements and meditations because each person's going to respond differently depending on kind of what they already have underneath their belt. And so I think it's something I'm just really passionate about and have been helping to teach other therapists how to bring these tools into their work with their clients because yoga can be the resilience that it can build in us is just really powerful. And again, then people can take those tools into their daily life and really navigate in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. You just said something that I would like to revisit, which is that trauma happens to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious about that because my first reaction was like, not necessarily,
Mm.
but because it can, well, and then I was like, well, maybe that is true in that trauma can be psychological too, but then it affects our physiological function.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
is that what you're referring to? Is like it's stored in the body.
Mm-hmm. Yep. One of my favorite books, and there's a whole chapter on yoga in this book, but it's The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful to just start to normalize, that we can't, our body goes through everything that our mind goes through. And so trauma happens to the body. It impacts our nervous system. It impacts our vagus nerve, which I think is like our little radar system that's helping us to detect safety in our environment and in relationships. And it can damage or impact all those different systems in the body. And then our body can store a lot of pieces. And so there might be triggers or sensations or things that we're experiencing in our body that could be related to the experiences that we've had in our mind. And one of my favorite quotes from it's Emily Nagoski, who she wrote the book Come As You Are, but she also wrote the book Burnout. And she always says, body only speaks body language, right? Like our body doesn't speak English. And so we can try to rationalize why we should or shouldn't have these triggers or these things that we're going through, but really our body only speaks body language. And so we have to talk to it in that way so that it will send those signals to our brain that we're safe, right? When we go through something scary or when we feel stressed or there's a potential for something traumatic or stressful to happen, to use the body to help override that stress response whenever it's just a fear of the stressor or the stress is over, the trauma is over. We still have to speak that body language to help the mind then kind of work through it. And so I think of it like a super highway, right? Information is being passed back and forth from the mind and the body all the time. We just might not always be tuning into the signals, but they're happening nonetheless.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, so the body as a storehouse. I mean, I guess I work so much with Ayurveda too. And I love how you say like there's not a one size fits all, basically, like that everybody has their own paths towards healing, which is totally Ayurvedic. That we're looking at kind of, and I talk a lot about listening with the ear of your heart. right? Like your body's giving you signals all
Yes.
the time. And if we don't listen, the body starts speaking louder and louder and louder and louder
Mhm.
until we finally listen. And it often takes us getting diagnosed with
Mhm.
something scary to
Yeah.
pay attention.
Right.
Yeah. And so trauma, so we think about um, the ways in which we don't listen to our bodies, and that creates its own type of trauma. Like it could be initiated by something happening externally,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But then the, I guess we could call it self neglect for
Mhm.
lack of, like we just don't know how to listen with the ear of our heart or to practice that deep self care.
Right.
And then that perpetuates or furthers the, I guess I think of it like the trauma like sinks in deeper.
Mhm. You're absolutely right. I heard somebody recently call it self-gaslighting, that we can sometimes
Mm,
then, like, kinda gaslight ourselves that we should and should, right? That we
yeah.
should or shouldn't have these, experiences. We should be over it by now. Like, again, it's all this kind of ways we can rationalize or
Mm,
intellectualize what's happening, but the body doesn't speak that, right? And so it's kind
mhm.
of using it as an ally. And I think I love that, listening to the heart, because and that's so important to slow it is required to slow down to be able to listen. And I think that's where yoga can be so helpful in breath work, because it gives a little sensation. So
Yeah.
sensation really helps, especially someone who's been through trauma, especially complex trauma, is that it giving sensation and the slow down process, I think, can make it feel safer, where there's some
Mm,
sensory input that we can tune into, like a movement or the rhythm of our breathing, as we slow down and listen to what the heart actually has to say. And so I think they can really kind of be teammates of that process.
yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the word safety several times. And
Mhm.
so it sounds like that is kind of the eventual goal is
Mhm.
that we are safe, we feel safe so that we can be in the parasympathetic
Mhm.
response, like the rest and digest response instead of the reaction
Yeah. Yeah.
response. Is that,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, so
yeah.
be able to press on the brake enough to move into that parasympathetic state, and that felt sense of safety. So creating that sense
Mm,
of safety around us, right? And then creating that sense of safety within ourselves so that we can feel more safe in our relationships. And so finding what tools help somebody feel safer, feel like they have some kind of locus of control. Like for
mm,
me, breath work is so helpful, because no matter where I'm at, I can control that. Like, I can make
mhm,
that, even if there's chaos happening around me, I can tune into what's happening in my breathing and shift it. And that's gonna
mhm,
shift the nervous system and shift what's happening up to the brain as well.
mm. Yes, so powerful. Do
Mhm.
you have some practices that you could share with us
Mhm.
today? I recognize it's not like prescriptive, but
Mhm.
some things that could help regulate our nervous systems or help
Mhm.
us feel safe
Yeah,
in our bodies.
absolutely. Um, Thinking about which one would be the most helpful, because I love sneaky self-care, so my mind goes to
Mm.
breath work, and then there's also, a brain game that I love teaching people, that's just a way to help kind of put our lids back on, and, where we
Well,
can.
you can do both if you want to. You don't
Yeah,
have to just do one.
great, okay. Um, okay, so let's start with the brain game then, because that's a little more, dynamic. And so, essentially, these brain games are just a way when we are stressed or go through trauma or feel like there's things happening that we don't have control over, we can flip our lid and we can go into this, like, emotional brain or survival brain. And so these tools are just a way to put our lid back on, and our lid is like that self-regulated impulse control. We're able to rationally assess what's going on. And so this tool is just a way to help us do that. And it can be pretty subtle, so that people might not have to know that we're doing something to feel safer or more calm. So I invite you to practice this with me. It's just using your hands. Let me get my hands on the camera. And so all you have to do is there's layers. So the first layer is just to tap the tips of your fingers, and you're just breathing. And so sometimes when we feel really stressed, like, this might be more than enough of a brain game just to coordinate. And then when this feels like, okay, this is, easy, I can do this one. The next layer is to take your left thumb on your left index and your right thumb on your right pinky, right? And we're going to tap the tips of the fingers so that left thumb gets to the left pinky and the right thumb gets to the right index. And we'll go back and forth. and noticing the breathing. When we're learning something new, it's really easy to start to hold our breath or have it be shallow, right? And then next layer, once this feels like, all right, I could do this one, would be to either close the eyes, or if that doesn't feel comfortable to somebody, you could bring your hands out to your side where you take the visual input out of it, but either one's fine. And again, we're breathing and we're noticing, and it can feel like this little in the brain trying to get it even moving. And taking another breath. And then when we're ready, we just kind of shake it out. Let it go. And so that's one way when we feel we have a thought from the past, we have something stressful that comes up in our present or in our mind from something that's happened before, to create some space. Like, that was said, that was done, but I'm here, I'm in my body, I'm safe. And so it's sending that signal. If there really was a mountain lion, right? There's no way we would be sitting here doing this cross body coordination, wouldn't be happening, right? And so it's a really helpful way to speak body language, to send this to our brain. Like, that might have been stressful or scary, but I'm safe now, rather than checking out, which is what can often happen when we go through trauma or stress, is we start to kind of check out. So this is, I call it tip tap fingers, but this is a way to start to check in with ourselves and find this sense of safety and a new focus within our bodies. So that's one of my favorites.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar to, I teach a meditation technique that I learned actually when I was, got trained in children's yoga. That's touching in the same order, but saying the mantra, peace begins with me, over and over again. And just staying with those words and the tactile sense. Yeah. So it reminds me of that. And it does, it brings you back down into your body, into focus states. That is, it's the one pointed focus, the limb of yoga, right? That's like, all this chaos can be happening in here, all these stories. And if we can just be like, focus on this one thing, the nervous system settles.
Yes, exactly. And for me, it's, and I love having a mantra or something with it. I think it's great, right? And so being able to, the more sensory input we can give to a practice, I think the more, the deeper it goes. And so I think some kind of mantra could be really powerful. And then having it be the cross body or opposite directions.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, switching it up. So you're going, opposite.
Yeah. And it can just look like we're fidgeting, like no one has to know that we're doing something to shift our brain, right? To shift our nervous system.
Under the table.
Oh yeah, I used to teach it when I would teach community yoga, like before the holidays, and I always be like, so when somebody starts to talk about politics or whatever it might be, right? Like under the table, we're just keeping our lid on, because we're gonna keep ourselves safer. We're gonna respond more intentionally. We're gonna show up in the way we want to show up if our lids are on, right? And it's one way to help us keep it if we start to get stressed and we start to feel the impact of that stress away.
That's awesome. Laura just wrote in the comments, she said, I totally felt the shift in my brain. It was like a click.
Yes. I always think like the little tick, 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 right? It's new pathways getting formed. It's building some neuroplasticity, which is just incredible that our brain can do that at any point in our life.
Yeah. Oh, she says, can you explain flipping the lid concept?
You got it. I love talking about this stuff. So there's a hand model. Dan Siegel coined this. This is not my model, but I love talking about this because it's a really helpful way to understand the brain. So there's different levels to the brain. So this is like the body. The base of the hand is the base of the brain. This is our survival mode, fight, flight, freeze. The palm is our emotional brain. And so this is called our limbic system. And then the thumb is our amygdala. And so it's these almond-shaped pieces inside of the limbic system. And Bessel van der Kolk talks about this as the smoke detector. So it's kind of firing off alarms when we feel stressed or threatened. And then up here is our prefrontal cortex. So that's I was talking about like the impulse control, self-regulation. And so when we go through stress, right, or if there's triggers, our amygdala starts to fire, right? And it's just vibrating and it's starting off alarms and we're trying to keep our lid on. One more thing happens and we flip our lid, right? And we'll either jump into this emotional brain or we'll jump into that survival brain. And it's not a conscious choice, right? We're not like, I'm going to freeze now, right? It happens and we make sense of it afterwards. And the more often in our lives we've gone to those places in our brain, that's the deeper grooves. And so it's just easier to go into that freeze mode, for example, if that's where we've gone throughout our life. And so I like that language because it's just a fact. We flipped our lid. I'd much rather have somebody come and talk to me about I had a flip my lid moment, right? Rather than why am I so crazy? And all these like shaming statements versus it's a fact. We flipped our lid. We're going to learn from it. And we are finding tools like yoga and breathwork and meditation, all these pieces to put them back on, to put that lid back on. So thank you for asking that. And it's Dan Siegel, Siegel, I believe is how you spell his last name. So he has some YouTube videos and stuff too.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for asking that question, Laura. Good explanation. Cool. So breath work, is there
breath work? Yes. So, and this is kind of a trauma-informed approach to it. So there's several different breathing practices that are out there. And two of the ones that I tend to teach people, and I'll offer one here, but I tried to do a modified version, especially as people are kind of getting familiar with breath work, and in particular with retention, with pausing the breath. So there's square breathing, which traditionally is more of like an inhale for 4, pause for 4, exhale 4, pause for 4. And what I like to do with people is to shorten that pause, because we don't often pause or hold our breath for very long unless we're in kind of a more of a stress-induced place. And so I think leaning towards that pausing and that retention can be helpful, just to make it a smoother ride to get comfortable with it. So that would be the one that I would love to offer a couple rounds of, if that's okay. So what we'll be doing will be an inhale for 3, we'll pause for 2, we'll exhale for 3, we'll pause for 2. So it's just kind of shortening the practice until we feel comfortable with that. And then we can start to lengthen it to become that 4 count square breath. So I invite you to practice it with me. So just settling into your body, you could lower the eyes or you could close them. So having that option is important. And then just start to deepen the breath. So as you're breathing in from the belly and the chest to the collarbones. And as you're breathing out, just see if you could soften the jaw and the shoulders and the hips. And we'll do that one more time before we begin. Just deep, full breath in. And slow, smooth breath out. And then inhaling when you're ready for the count of 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. So we'll do 2 more rounds. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Last round. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 2, 1. Taking a normal breath in and a normal breath out. Just releasing the practice when you're ready. And slowly coming back.
Thank you. That felt great.
Yeah, I love that practice so much. It can be really grounding for people.
Yeah. So I love this concept of, it's somatic healing. So it's bringing what we are working through into an awareness in the body. And as somebody who's a therapist and a somatic practitioner, a yoga teacher, and breathwork practitioner, how do you see those two pieces working together? Because I think this is shifting, but I think there's a model or structure that's like, if you want to work through stuff, you need to talk through it and understand it in your mind. And yet we know that there's so much stored in the body, like you were saying, that doesn't speak English. It might not come out in logical sentences.
Yeah.
How do you think about both of those things in healing?
That's a great question. And I think it's so important to bring it in, especially in the realm of trauma, because When we flip our lid, one thing that happens is our speech center can go offline. And so I'm a really firm believer that talk therapy alone eventually will just hit a wall when we're trying to heal from trauma, that if we don't bring the body into it, we can't get fully to that integrated kind of place with it, because that speech center wasn't even online for often for those experiences. And so the way I approach it is really the somatic piece is the foundation. So in my private practice with clients, I follow like a stage model with people. And so I start with all these practices. So self-regulation is the first stage of anything. And so having that foundation of a deeper relationship in the body, having tools in the moment that we know can help us put our lid back on, can help us regulate the nervous system, to me is foundational before I do any EMDR with somebody or any kind of like deeper processing of the stressful or traumatic events. Is I make sure that we have that foundation of understanding levels of the brain with that lid flip, understanding how and where we store our emotions and experiences in our bodies, and then having tools that are working for that person. So it's a piece that I'm really passionate about, and I love bringing into the world, because I just feel like if we don't have that foundation, the road's just going to be rockier, right? Because for me, at least, when I go through big life transitions or stressful events, I'm always like, but child's pose is the same, right? Like my breathing is the same, like all this can change, right? But child's pose is the same. And so it gives us that home base to come back to. And so I just think there's many approaches to therapy and many approaches to healing, and it isn't one size fits all. But for me, that's I think they're just essential. Talk therapy, therapy, that combination is really important and really powerful.
Yeah, I love that you say that that's foundational. Like being in the body is the place to start, not go to later. Yeah, powerful. I realize we're running out of time and I have a bunch more questions, but will you tell us what EMDR is real quick for folks that aren't familiar with that?
It's a mouthful what it stands for, but it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And so essentially the like elevator speech that I can give of what it is when we're in REM sleep, so in that deep state of sleep, our eyes actually dart back and forth when our eyes are closed. It's our brain's organic way of processing events of the day, filing them away. And so EMDR takes that organic process that our brain already knows how to do, which is bilateral stimulation, eyes moving back and forth. It can be tapping. It can be holding things that are tapping or vibrating from side to side. It can be bilateral music, but it essentially takes that process and it can help with that. There's like an emotional charge around the memory, and EMDR takes that emotional charge and it files it into this factual part of the brain, because what we've been through is always going to be a fact, but the triggers and the flood and all of those pieces can get filed into this different part of the brain, so that we just have the fact of what happened rather than the flood of what happened. And the beautiful thing about it is once we file that away, like it doesn't go back. It changes for a lifetime. And so I believe in it wholeheartedly. I received it 8 or 9 years ago. It changed my life. And so about 6 years ago, I got trained in it because it felt so transformational. I was like, I want to bring this more into the world. And so for a lot of folks, it can be really helpful. And I find, especially when there's that foundation of in the body before we do it, it's just going to be a smoother experience. And we have these tools to come back to when things come up and feel challenging, but we have tools already there available for us.
So one last question for those of us in this community practicing yoga together. Do you feel like just showing up, like I often just show up on my mat. I mean, I'm teaching these classes, right? But I'm kind of like, what's needed today? Both like in my life and like feeling into the community. Although I can't see anybody, I'm teaching on Facebook, but like the energetics of like what's needed here, and letting that guide, kind of getting out of the way and letting that guide movement and breath. Is that how you would recommend people in terms of using yoga in their own lives? Is that how you would encourage them to consider it, kind of like in listening to that body language of like what's needed today?
In their own home practice, or when they're teaching?
Yeah,
in the home practice.
in home practice. Yeah.
That's a great question. So and I think everyone's different, right? So
Mhm.
I love like ritual and structure and kind of rhythms. And so for me, I have a piece that in my home practice, I always start with a certain movement,
Mhm.
and then I kind of feel into what's needed next.
Mm.
I have a pose that I love to do at the end. So for me, I have a bookend approach where those are
Mhm.
the same, and then the rest kind of gets to be intuitive. I know some people will kind of do the same exact sequence, right, every time. And then there are those really intuitive people who just flow the whole time. And so I think if we
Mhm.
don't know which one we fall under, probably that bookend approach might be helpful, where we have the same breathwork practice or kind of movement that we do at the beginning, and then we just listen, right? And what
Mm.
will feel nice next, and how can we kind of flow with that piece? And so I think staying curious and staying creative is really important, because it's going to change. Depend As we evolve, it will evolve as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Wonderful. So in closing, thank you. And
Okay.
where can people find you? I know you offer little videos on Instagram and
Yeah.
out for people out in the larger world that don't live where you live. How can
Mhm.
they interact with you?
Absolutely. So the easiest place to start is it's a Becca Odom Wellness.com is my website, and that has links to I have some YouTube videos that are just free yoga and breath work, and some meditations, online trainings and that kind of thing are there as well. And so that would probably be the easiest place to start. And if anyone has questions, you can contact me through the website, and I'm always happy to share resources or talk more about my private practice and that kind of thing with clients. And so, yeah, Becca Odom Wellness was my Instagram handle, and then my website as well.
Awesome. And we'll post that on in our Facebook group with this
Thank you.
interview. Thank you so much for being here. Any final words of wisdom you want to share with the community?
I just think one breath at a time, right? Like a
Mm,
drop in the bucket. Even if we just can pause and take 5 breaths, that's still 5 breaths. So I think
yeah.
small and steady is way better than a deep dive any day, because that's going to
Mm.
be a longer change. So just little bits at a time every day.
Thank you so much, Becca. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Awesome. Bye.